Sloan Merritt's voice cracked like a whip through the boardroom. 43 investors froze. Every smartphone camera swiveled toward the man in the doorway. Rumpled gray uniform, mop bucket, company ID badge reading maintenance. Sloan rose from her chair at the head of the table, her Valentino suit worth more than his annual salary. Do you have any idea how much money is being discussed in this room right now? Or are you just another minimum wage employee who thinks eavesdropping on his betters counts as career advancement? Ethan Graves's throat went dry. His 7-year-old daughter, Chloe, waited 3 floors below in the building's overnight care center. The insulin she needed cost $3,800 monthly, exactly why he couldn't afford to lose this job. Ma'am, I apologize. Grant Westfield cut him off, standing with a predator's smile. As chief investment officer, he was Sloan's right hand and the most feared man at Merritt Capital. Ms. Merritt asked you a question. You've been standing there for 15 minutes listening to strategies you couldn't possibly comprehend. So let's make this educational. He gestured to the massive screen behind Sloan charts projections, risk models for a $2.3 billion trade set to execute in 90 minutes. Tell us, Janitor, what's your expert opinion on tomorrow's Nakamura Electronics acquisition? Should we invest our clients' money, or do you see some problem that 43 licensed professionals somehow missed? The room erupted in laughter. Someone was already typing on Twitter. Cleaning guy crashes investment meeting at Merritt Capital. Wall Street. Humor. Sloan's eyes glittered with cold amusement. Go ahead, enlighten us. Where exactly should we put $2.3 billion? Ethan stared at the screen at numbers his brain was already calculating, cross-referencing, pattern matching against financial data he'd memorized from 7 years of obsessive study. At red flags these people somehow weren't seeing. His hands trembled. Every instinct screamed to apologize and run, but he looked at those numbers again and knew what would happen if they made this trade. You can't invest in Nakamura, his voice barely audible. The laughter died instantly. Sloan's expression hardened to ice. I'm sorry. The merger you're planning to bet $2.3 billion on. Ethan's voice steadied even as his heart pounded. It's going to collapse in exactly, he checked the wall clock, 4 hours and 17 minutes when Tokyo markets open. And if you invest tonight, every dollar you put in disappears. Grant's face flashed with something dark before his smile returned. And how exactly would a janitor know that Ethan pointed to the third column of data cleaning rag still clutched in his other hand? Because Nakamura's quarterly earnings are inflated by 34.2%. Same percentage as the STO financial fraud in 2018. Same shell company structure, same offshore routing through Hong Kong subsidiaries. Their CFO is cooking the books. And when their mandatory regulatory filing hits Japanese authorities in 4 hours, this whole merger implodes. You'll lose everything. The silence was absolute. Sloan Merritt stared at the janitor who had just deconstructed in 45 seconds what her team spent 6 weeks building. Her knuckles went white against the mahogany table. Who the hell are you? Ethan met her gaze for the first time. Someone who's seen this exact pattern before. Someone who knows what fraud looks like when everyone else is too busy celebrating to notice. This is insane. Grant's voice carried an edge now. Ms. Merritt, we're taking investment advice from a man who cleans toilets, actually. Jennifer Park, one of Sloan's senior analysts, was staring at her laptop with wide eyes. He might be right. I'm pulling Nakamura's subsidiary filings from the Hong Kong exchange right now, and there are discrepancies. Major ones. The room's energy shifted. Investors leaned forward. Sloan's laser focus locked onto Ethan. You have 5 minutes. Explain everything, and if you're wasting my time, security will escort you out permanently. Ethan set down his mop bucket. His heart hammered against his ribs, but his mind was already organizing data, connecting patterns, building the case that might save these people billions, or destroy what little he had left. Nakamura Electronics reported $847 million in Q3 revenue. He began. But if you cross-reference their Hong Kong subsidiary disclosures with Japanese domestic filings, the numbers don't match. There's a $289 million gap being funneled through shell companies in the Cayman Islands. The CFO, Tishi Yamamoto, used this exact structure when he was at STO Financial before their collapse. Jennifer's fingers flew across her keyboard. He's right. Yamamoto was STO's VP of Finance until 2018. He left 3 months before the scandal broke. That's circumstantial. Grant was sweating now. We've done extensive due diligence. Your due diligence missed the subsidiary structure because you focused on consolidated statements. Ethan interrupted. But the pattern is there. Revenue inflation of exactly 34.2% achieved through intercompany transactions that don't actually represent real business. When Tokyo regulators publish their audit findings at 900 a.m., their time the merger announcement gets pulled. Stock price crashes. Everyone who invested loses everything. Sloan picked up her phone. Margaret, get me the head of our Tokyo office now. She looked at Ethan. If you're wrong about this, I'll make sure you never work in this building again. If you're right, she paused. How does a janitor know this much about international securities? Fraud, long story. I've got time. Before Ethan could answer, Jennifer spoke up again. Ms. Merritt, I'm finding more. The intercompany transactions he's talking about, they're real, and they follow the exact same pattern as STO Financial before they collapsed. If we invest, we're not investing. Sloan's voice cut through the room like steel. Cancel the Nakamura trade, all of it. Contact every client on the call list and tell them the deal is off. Sloan, we can't just grant started. We can and we are. Jennifer, I want a full audit of Nakamura's financials on my desk in 3 hours. Use every resource we have in Tokyo. She turned back to Ethan. You, my office now. The walk to Sloan's office felt like a death march. Ethan's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Through the glass walls, he could see other employees staring. Word traveled fast in buildings like this. By morning, everyone would know the janitor crashed an executive meeting and somehow convinced the CEO to cancel a multi-billion-dollar trade. Sloan's office occupied the corner of the 53rd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a God's view of Manhattan, the city spreading out in a glittering grid of ambition and money. The furniture probably cost more than Ethan made in 5 years. Sit. Sloan didn't look at him as she poured 2 glasses of water from a crystal decanter. She handed him one and leaned against her desk, arms crossed. Start talking. Who are you really? Ethan drank the entire glass. His mouth was desert dry. My name is Ethan Graves. 7 years ago, I was a senior analyst at Harrison & Pierce. Recognition flashed in Sloan's eyes. The firm that went under in the Princeton data scandal. I didn't work on Princeton data. I worked in emerging markets, mostly Asian securities. Ethan set down the glass. But I found something. A pattern of fraudulent trades being routed through our Hong Kong office. $500 million moving through shell companies. When I reported it to the partners, they turned on you. They blamed me for the fraud, said I'd been orchestrating it and got caught. I lost my licenses, my career, my marriage. Spent 2 years fighting criminal charges that eventually got dropped for lack of evidence, but by then my reputation was destroyed. No firm would touch me. Sloan studied him with an intensity that made Ethan feel stripped bare. So you became a janitor. I needed health insurance. My daughter has juvenile diabetes. The medication costs nearly $4,000 a month. Merritt Capital's janitorial contractor offers benefits that actually cover her treatment. So yes, I clean floors. And I listen. And I watch. Because I never stopped studying markets, never stopped seeing patterns. I just couldn't do anything about it anymore. Until tonight. Until you forced me to speak. The intercom on Sloan's desk buzzed. Ms. Merritt, Tokyo, office line 1. They're confirming the discrepancies in Nakamura's filings. Sloan picked up the phone. Talk to me. She listened for 2 minutes, her expression growing darker. Send me everything. I want documentation within the hour. She hung up and looked at Ethan with something that might be respect. You just saved this firm from the biggest loss in its history. Our Tokyo team confirms everything you said. Nakamura's merger announcement is being delayed pending regulatory investigation. If we'd invested, we would have lost $2.3 billion of our clients' money. How much do we pay you to clean floors? $32,000 a year, plus benefits. Sloan laughed a sharp, humorless sound. I just paid Grant Westfield $800,000 in bonuses this year, and he missed fraud that a janitor spotted in 15 minutes. She walked to the window, her silhouette framed against the city lights. What do you want, Ethan Graves? I want to keep my job. I need the insurance for my daughter. That's the minimum you should want. Sloan turned around. I'm offering you a trial position as a junior analyst. $60,000 base salary, full benefits, performance bonuses. You work with Jennifer's team for 3 months. If you're as good as tonight, suggest we make it permanent and discuss senior positions. Ethan's heart stopped. You're serious. I don't joke about money or talent. You have both. The question is whether you can do this job every day, not just once in a crisis. Her eyes narrowed. But I need to know, are you running some kind of con? Because if this is corporate espionage or you're working for competitors, I'm not. I'm just a father trying to keep his daughter alive and healthy. That's all I've been for 7 years. Something in Sloane's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Be here tomorrow at 8:00 a.m. Wear something that isn't a janitor's uniform. We'll see what you're really capable of. Ethan stood his legs unsteady. Thank you. I won't let you down. Don't thank me yet. Half this firm is going to hate you by tomorrow morning. The janitor who thinks he's smarter than licensed professionals. You'll have to prove yourself every single day. She paused. And Ethan, whatever happened at Harrison and Pierce, I'm going to investigate it. If you lied to me about anything, this offer disappears. I didn't lie. Good. Now go get your daughter. It's late. Ethan left the office in a daze. The elevator ride down felt surreal. 3 hours ago, he was mopping floors. Now he had an analyst position at one of Manhattan's most prestigious firms. It didn't feel real. It felt like the universe was playing a cruel joke that would collapse at any moment. Chloe was asleep in the building's overnight care facility when Ethan arrived. She was curled up in a small chair, her insulin pump visible under her Disney princess t-shirt. He gently woke her. Daddy, she rubbed her eyes. Is it home time? Yeah, baby, it's home time. Did you finish cleaning all the floors? Ethan picked her up, feeling the familiar weight of her against his chest. I did something different tonight. I'll tell you about it tomorrow. Okay. Chloe yawned and rested her head on his shoulder. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Chloe. More than anything. As they left the building, Ethan glanced back at the lit windows of the 53rd floor. Sloane's office was still bright. She was probably already working, already investigating him, already testing whether tonight was real or illusion. He didn't know that 53 floors above Sloane Merritt was staring at financial records from Harrison and Pierce, reading about a junior analyst who tried to expose fraud and was destroyed for it. She didn't know why she cared. She'd built her empire on ruthless pragmatism, on judging people by results rather than circumstances. But something about the janitor who spoke truth to power while risking everything he had, something about that refused to leave her mind. The next morning, Ethan stood outside Merritt Capital at 7:45 a.m., wearing the only suit he owned, a 5-year-old Joss, a bank special that was slightly too big in the shoulders. He dropped Chloe at school with promises to pick her up on time, then took the subway to Midtown with his heart pounding against his ribs. The building looked different in daylight. Less fortress, more glass cathedral to money and ambition. Employees streamed through the revolving doors in expensive suits and designer shoes. Everyone moving with the confidence of people whose worth was never questioned. Ethan took a breath and walked inside. Security recognized him. Mr. Graves. Ms. Merritt left instructions. Take the executive elevator to 53. She's expecting you. The ride up was torture. Ethan caught his reflection in the polished steel. Someone trying to be something he hadn't been in 7 years. He looked like a fraud wearing a costume. The doors opened to chaos. Completely insane that we're hiring. Actually knows what he's talking about. Janitor, for God's sake, this is Merritt Capital, not a charity. Jennifer Park spotted Ethan first. There he is. She walked over with a tablet and a smile that seemed genuine. Welcome to the war zone. Half the analysts think you're a genius. The other half think that Sloane's lost her mind. Grant's been in her office for 20 minutes arguing against your hire. Maybe I should come back later. Don't you dare. Jennifer handed him the tablet. This is your workstation assignment, building access codes system login. You're on my team, which means you report to me and I report to Sloane. Your first assignment is analyzing the Nakamura situation. We need a full report by end of day documenting exactly how you identified the fraud. Jennifer Grant Westfield's voice cut through the noise. He was walking toward them with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I see our newest employee has arrived. Ethan, is it welcome to Merritt Capital? I'm sure this will be an interesting experiment. The emphasis on experiment was clear. This is temporary. This is probation. One mistake and you're gone. Thank you, Mr. Westfield. Call me Grant. We're all colleagues here regardless of background. His smile sharpened. Though I have to say, Sloane's taking quite a risk hiring someone with your history. Harrison and Pierce was a difficult situation, wasn't it? All those accusations of fraud that nearly resulted in criminal charges. Jennifer's expression hardened. The charges were dropped. Ethan was cleared. Dropped isn't the same as cleared, but I'm sure everything will be fine. Grant patted Ethan's shoulder. Just remember, this is the major leagues. We can't afford mistakes here. Not like wherever you've been working recently. He walked away, leaving tension in his wake. Don't let him rattle you, Jennifer said quietly. Grant doesn't like anyone who threatens his position as Sloane's top advisor. And you definitely threatened that last night. I didn't mean to threaten anyone. Too late. You made him look bad in front of 43 investors. Men like Grant don't forgive that easily. Before Ethan could respond, Sloane's office door opened. She was on the phone gesturing for him to come inside. He walked in on shaking legs. Don't care what the board thinks, Marcus. We avoided a catastrophic loss. That's what matters. Sloane hung up and studied Ethan. You look terrified. Honestly, I am. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. She handed him a file folder. I spent most of last night investigating you. The Harrison and Pierce scandal, the fraud accusations, all of it. You want to know what I found? Ethan's mouth went dry. What, that you were telling the truth? The senior partners at Harrison and Pierce were running a massive fraud scheme through their Hong Kong office. When you discovered it, they needed a scapegoat. You were junior enough to be expendable, smart enough to be plausible, and naive enough not to see it coming until it was too late. She leaned back in her chair. They destroyed you to save themselves. You believe me? I believe evidence. And the evidence says you got screwed by people who should have protected you. Sloane's gaze was intense. But here's what I need to know. Are you going to be able to do this job without that history destroying you again? Because the moment word spreads about who you are, people will use it against you. They'll question every analysis you make, every recommendation you give. Can you handle that? Ethan thought about Chloe, about insulin pumps and hospital bills and 7 years of scraping by. About the dream he thought was dead forever. Yes, I can handle it. Then get to work. Jennifer will guide you through your first assignment. And Ethan, don't make me regret this. 3 weeks passed in a blur of spreadsheets, market analysis, and slowly winning over skeptical colleagues. Ethan worked 12-hour days, arriving early and leaving late, building reports that were so thorough they couldn't be dismissed. He identified 3 more potential fraud situations before they became problems. He saved clients from bad investments. Slowly, grudgingly, people started to respect him, but not everyone. Grant Westfield watched from his office like a spider in its web. He complimented Ethan's work in meetings while subtly undermining him in private conversations. He questioned his analysis just enough to plant seeds of doubt. He reminded people about Harrison and Pierce whenever Ethan wasn't in the room. And he did something else too, something nobody noticed. He started accessing Ethan's computer after hours. He studied his patterns, his methods, his analyses. Because Grant had a problem that was getting worse every day. His own fraud was still buried in Merritt Capital's books, and Ethan was exactly the kind of analyst who might stumble onto it. The person who noticed the subtle war was Sloane. She watched Ethan work from her office, saw how he approached problems differently than her other analysts. He didn't just run numbers. He looked for patterns, for human behavior, for the psychology behind financial decisions. It was the same instinct that made him spot Nakamura's fraud in minutes. But she also saw how he struggled, how he ate lunch alone because other analysts hadn't fully accepted him, how he left exactly at 5:00 p.m. every day to pick up his daughter, never staying for after-work drinks or networking events, how he was rebuilding a career while raising a child by himself. One evening, Sloane found herself working late when Ethan returned to the building at 8:00 p.m. "You're back," she said, surprising him in the hallway. "Chloe's asleep. My neighbor's watching her for a few hours. I wanted to finish the Thompson Industries report." "You don't have to work nights to prove yourself." "Yes, I do." Ethan met her eyes. "Everyone here knows I was a janitor 3 weeks ago. They're waiting for me to fail. I can't give them that satisfaction." Sloane understood that drive more than he knew. She'd built Merritt Capital from nothing, fighting every day against men who said women couldn't run investment firms. She'd worked twice as hard for half the recognition until she became too successful to ignore. "Have dinner with me," she said suddenly. Ethan blinked. "What dinner?" "There's a Thai place 2 blocks from here that stays open late. You need to eat. I need to eat. and we can discuss the Thompson Industries situation without 40 people listening to every word. Is this a business dinner or does it matter? Sloane's expression was unreadable. I'm asking if you want to get dinner with me. Yes or no? Ethan hesitated for only a second. Yes. The restaurant was small, tucked between two larger buildings, the kind of place where Manhattan's working class ate when they couldn't afford the trendy spots. They sat in a corner booth with cracked vinyl seats and fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly ill. You come here often? Ethan asked. I used to when I was starting out and couldn't afford anything else. Sloane ordered pad thai and spring rolls without looking at the menu. This is where I came the night I decided to start my own firm. I was 29 years old working for a company that paid me 60% of what they paid men with half my talent. So I walked out, came here, and planned my empire on napkins. How long did it take? 15 years of 18-hour days. 15 years of being told I'd fail, that women couldn't handle high-stakes finance, that I was too aggressive, too cold, too everything. She looked directly at him. I didn't build merit capital by being nice. I built it by being better than everyone else and refusing to quit. That's what I'm trying to do now. Be better. Prove I deserve to be there. You've already proven it. The Nakamura analysis alone justified your hire. Everything since then is just you being excellent at your job. Sloane leaned back. But I'm curious about something else. You have a daughter. Where's her mother? The question landed like a punch. Ethan took a long drink of water. Rebecca left when Chloe was 2. After I lost everything at Harrison and Pierce, she couldn't handle it. The poverty, the shame, the way people looked at us. She wanted the life we'd planned. Manhattan apartment, private schools, vacations in Europe. Not a husband facing fraud charges who couldn't get hired anywhere. His voice was flat. She moved to California, remarried someone in tech. Sends a birthday card to Chloe once a year. That's it. We're better off. I'm sorry. Don't be. Chloe and I are better off. We have each other. That's enough. Sloane saw something in his face, a protective love so fierce it was almost painful to witness. She'd never had that. Never wanted children. Never made space in her life for anything except ambition. But watching Ethan talk about his daughter, she wondered what it was like to love someone more than your own success. Tell me about her, Sloane said, and Ethan did. He talked about Chloe's diabetes diagnosis when she was 4, the terror of learning to manage insulin and blood sugar. He talked about her love of drawing, how she wanted to be an artist when she grew up. He talked about reading to her every night the same princess books over and over because she never got tired of happy endings. Sloane listened and realized she was seeing a version of Ethan that didn't exist at the office. Not the brilliant analyst or the man fighting to prove himself. Just a father who loved his daughter with everything he had. She's lucky to have you, Sloane said quietly. I'm lucky to have her. She's the reason I didn't give up when everything fell apart. When I wanted to just disappear, she needed me. So I kept going. They talked until the restaurant closed at 11:00 p.m. About finance, about ambition, about the cost of success and the price of failure. When they finally left, Manhattan was quieter, the streets emptying as the city transitioned from day chaos to night. Thank you for dinner, Ethan said. We should do it again. Discuss cases, strategies. Sloane paused. This was still mostly professional. Mostly, I'm still deciding. She hailed a cab. See you tomorrow, Ethan. As the cab pulled away, Ethan stood on the sidewalk wondering what just happened. Whether his boss just asked him to dinner as networking or something else. Whether he was reading too much into nothing. 53 floors above the city in her penthouse apartment that was all glass and steel and expensive emptiness, Sloane wondered the same thing. She'd built her empire by never letting personal feelings interfere with business, by keeping everyone at arm's length, by being the brilliant, untouchable CEO who needed no one. But something about Ethan Graves was making her question that isolation. Something about his quiet strength, his refusal to give up his dedication to his daughter. It was getting under her skin in ways she didn't entirely understand or welcome. She pushed the thought away and opened her laptop. Work was safer than feelings. Numbers didn't betray you. Success didn't leave. But even as she reviewed reports, her mind kept drifting back to a corner booth in a cheap Thai restaurant. And the way Ethan talked about his daughter, like she was his entire world. The next morning brought disaster in a form nobody expected. Ethan arrived at the office to find Jennifer waiting by his desk with a grim expression. "We have a problem, a big one." "What happened?" "Someone leaked your Harrison and Pierce history to the financial press. There's an article in the Wall Street Journal about how Merit Capital hired a former analyst who was accused of securities fraud. It's all over social media. Clients are calling demanding to know why we're employing someone with your background." Ethan's blood ran cold. "I was cleared of those charges." "The article mentions that, but it also mentions that the charges were dropped, not that you were proven innocent. It's written to make you look suspicious." Jennifer pulled up her phone, showing him the headline, "Merit Capital's risky hire janitor turned analyst Ethan Graves has history of fraud accusations." "Who leaked this?" "We don't know, but someone inside this firm gave them information about your employment here. Someone who wants you gone." Sloane's office door opened. Ethan inside. Now, the walk felt like execution. Other analysts stared as he passed, their expressions ranging from sympathy to satisfaction. This is what they'd been waiting for. Proof that the janitor didn't belong. Grant Westfield was already in Sloane's office, looking appropriately concerned. "This is a PR nightmare. We have clients threatening to pull accounts over this hire." "Then we explain the truth," Sloane said coldly. "The truth is complicated, and in finance complicated looks guilty." Grant turned to Ethan with false sympathy. "I'm sorry this happened, but maybe it's better to part ways before this damages the firm's reputation further." "No." Sloane's voice cut like ice. "Ethan stays. We issue a statement explaining his history, the false accusations, and his complete vindication. We emphasize his brilliant work identifying the Nakamura fraud that saved our clients billions. Anyone who doesn't like it can take their business elsewhere." "Sloane, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. I'm defending an employee who was targeted by a malicious leak designed to destroy his reputation." Again. She looked directly at Grant. "And I'm very interested in finding out who gave this story to the press, because that person committed corporate espionage and betrayed this firm's confidentiality policies." Grant's expression flickered for just a moment, so quick that anyone else would miss it. But Ethan saw it, a flash of something dark before the concerned colleague mask slid back into place. "Of course, we should investigate thoroughly." Grant stood. "I'll leave you two to discuss damage control." After he left, Sloane turned to Ethan. "This was deliberate. Someone's trying to force you out." "Grant, you can't prove that. But you suspect it too." Sloane didn't deny it. "Grant's been with me for 8 years. He's brilliant at his job. I trust him with billion-dollar decisions." "Then why do you look like you're questioning that trust?" The question hung between them. Sloane walked to her window, staring out at the city she conquered through sheer force of will. "Because something's been off lately. Decisions that don't quite make sense. Reports that seem correct but feel wrong. I've ignored it because Grant's been loyal and effective." She turned around. "But watching him push to fire you over leaked information that came from inside this firm, my instincts are telling me to pay attention. What do you want me to do? Keep working? Prove you're exactly as good as I think you are. And watch Grant. If he's the leak, he'll make another move. People always do when they think they're winning." Ethan went back to his desk, but the office atmosphere had shifted. Colleagues who were warming to him now kept their distance. The whispers followed him everywhere. The janitor with a fraud history. The risky hire that's bringing down the firm's reputation. Only Jennifer stayed loyal, sitting with him at lunch, while everyone else avoided their table. "This will blow over," she said. "Give it a week. People have short memories. Or I'll be fired and forgotten by Friday." Sloane doesn't fire people for being innocent victims of hit pieces. She's defending you publicly. That means something, but the pressure was crushing. Ethan worked through lunch, through breaks, trying to produce analysis so good it couldn't be questioned. He stayed until 7 p.m., only leaving because Chloe needed him. His daughter sensed something was wrong the moment he picked her up. "Daddy, you look sad. Just a tough day at work, baby. Did someone be mean to you?" Ethan knelt to her level. "Some people don't think I should have my job. They're trying to get me in trouble." Chloe's face scrunched with 7-year-old indignation. "That's not fair. You're the smartest daddy in the whole world." "Thank you, Chloe, but it's complicated. Can't you just show them you're smart? Like when you helped me with my math homework and I got an A. If only it were that simple." But Chloe's words planted a seed. He needed to produce something so undeniably brilliant that no one could question his value. Something that proved Sloane's faith in him wasn't misplaced. That night, after Chloe's asleep, Ethan opened his laptop and started digging into something that had been bothering him for weeks. Small discrepancies in Merit Capital's Asian investments. Nothing obvious, but patterns that didn't quite align. He followed the thread deeper, cross-referencing trades and subsidiary reports. And he found something that made his blood run cold. Someone had been systematically hiding losses in Merit Capital's Hong Kong accounts. Small amounts, never enough to trigger audits. But over 2 years, it added up to over $200 million in missing funds. The same pattern he saw at Harrison and Pierce. The same structure that destroyed his career. And every suspicious trade had one name attached to its approval: Grant Westfield. Ethan's hands shook as he compiled the evidence. This was bigger than leaked articles or office politics. This was massive fraud happening right under Sloane's nose. But he couldn't just email her. If Grant found out, Ethan knew he'd destroy the evidence, and probably destroy Ethan too. He needed to be smart about this. Careful, build an airtight case before revealing anything. But time was something he might not have. The next morning, Ethan arrived early to find his computer login disabled. His desk access cards didn't work. When he tried to enter the analyst floor, security stopped him. "I'm sorry, Mr. Graves. Your building access has been suspended pending review." "Review of what? I'm not authorized to discuss that. You'll need to speak with HR." Ethan's heart pounded as he took the elevator to HR. The department head, a woman named Patricia Chen, looked uncomfortable when he walked in. "Mr. Graves, please sit down. Why is my access suspended?" "There's been an allegation of improper computer use. Someone reported that you were accessing confidential files outside your authorization level." "That's ridiculous. I've only accessed files Jennifer assigned to me." "The report says you were reviewing Hong Kong subsidiary accounts at 11:00 p.m. last night from your home IP address. Those files require special clearance you don't have." Ethan's mind raced. Someone was monitoring his computer activity. Someone saw him investigating the fraud and moved immediately to shut him down. "This is a setup. Someone's trying to get me fired before I can expose what I found. Mr. Graves making accusations without evidence. I have evidence. There's fraud happening in the Hong Kong accounts. Systematic theft over 2 years. I was gathering documentation to present to Ms. Merritt." Patricia's expression shifted slightly. "That's a serious allegation. Do you have proof on my work computer, which I can't access because my credentials are disabled?" "I see." Patricia considered for a long moment. "Wait here." She left for 10 minutes that felt like hours. When she returned, Sloane was with her. "Explain," Sloane said without preamble. Ethan told her everything. The patterns he noticed, the missing funds, the Hong Kong subsidiaries, Grant's name on every approval. He expected skepticism, accusations that he was making things up to save his job. Instead, Sloane's face went very still. "How much is missing?" "Over $200 million that I can document. Possibly more." "And you found this how?" "The same way I found Nakamura's fraud. Pattern recognition. The numbers don't lie if you know what to look for." Sloane turned to Patricia. "Reinstate his access. Full clearance. And this conversation stays between the three of us. Sloane, if there's truth to this, then we handle it carefully and quietly until we have undeniable proof. If Grant suspects we're investigating him, evidence disappears and we lose everything." She looked at Ethan. "You're going to work with me directly on this. No one else knows. Not Jennifer, not the board, no one. Can you do that?" "Yes, good. Because if you're right, Grant has been stealing from my firm for 2 years. And if you're wrong, I just gave classified access to someone who might be paranoid." Her eyes were hard. "Don't make me regret this trust." For the next week, Ethan and Sloane worked in secret. She gave him access to everything: complete financial records, trading histories, subsidiary reports. They met in her office after hours when the building was mostly empty, going through years of data. The evidence built slowly. Grant was brilliant about covering his tracks. He never stole from large visible accounts. He targeted smaller Hong Kong investments, where losses could be attributed to market volatility. He spread the theft across dozens of transactions over 2 years. But the pattern was there. Once Ethan showed Sloane what to look for, it became undeniable. "He's been stealing from me," Sloane said one night, her voice cold with fury. For 2 years while I trusted him, promoted him, gave him power over billions in client assets. He's smart. He knew exactly how much to take without triggering automatic audits. But you found it anyway, because I've seen this before. At Harrison and Pierce, the partners there used the exact same structure. Ethan pulled up a comparison chart. Look, same subsidiary patterns, same offshore routing, same small amount strategy. Grant either learned from them or used the same playbook. Sloan stared at the evidence, her mind racing through implications. If this goes public, Merit Capital's reputation is destroyed. Clients will flee. The SEC will investigate everything I've built. Or you handle it internally. Confront Grant. Recover what you can. Fire him quietly. The fraud stays contained. That's not justice. No, but it's survival. Sloan met his eyes. For the first time since Ethan met her, she looked uncertain, vulnerable. The brilliant CEO who always had answers was facing a betrayal that cut deeper than money. I trusted him, she said quietly. He's been my right hand for 8 years. How did I miss this? Because people who commit fraud are good at deception. That's how they succeed. You weren't deceived, you saw through it in days. I had reason to be suspicious. I've been burned before. Ethan moved closer. This isn't your failure, Sloan. This is Grant's crime. Don't let him make you doubt yourself. Something passed between them in that moment, an understanding born from shared experience with betrayal and loss. Sloan had spent her entire career being untouchable, unbreakable. But right now, she was just a person who trusted the wrong man and got hurt. What would you do? She asked. If this was your decision, I'd expose him completely. Document everything, present it to the board and the SEC, let the legal system handle it. Because if you cover this up, you become complicit. And you're better than that. The firm could collapse or it survives because you had the courage to face the truth and fix it. Clients respect integrity. They'll leave if you're corrupt, but if you're the CEO who discovered fraud and immediately addressed it, that's leadership. Sloan studied him for a long moment. When did a janitor become my moral compass? About the time a billionaire CEO decided to give him a chance. She almost smiled. Almost. Help me build the case. Make it airtight. We present to the board in 1 week. They worked through the night building documentation so thorough that no one could deny what happened. But they weren't the only ones working late. 3 floors down, Grant Westfield sat in his office monitoring security logs. He saw Sloan and Ethan in the executive suite, saw them accessing Hong Kong account data, saw the pattern of their research. They know. Grant's hands shook as he pulled up his offshore accounts. 287 million hidden across a dozen shell companies in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and Singapore. Money he took one small piece at a time, so carefully that no one should have noticed. But Ethan Graves noticed the same way he noticed Nakamura, the same instinct that destroyed Grant's carefully constructed cover. Grant considered running, taking what he could, and disappearing to somewhere without extradition treaties. But running meant abandoning everything: his reputation, his network, his position of power. He needed to eliminate the threat first. Silence Ethan permanently before he could present evidence. Grant made a phone call to a contact who handled problems discreetly. I need information on someone. Everything you can find. Family routines, vulnerabilities. I need it by tomorrow. The next evening, Ethan was picking up Chloe from school when he noticed the car. A black sedan parked across the street. Engine running, windows tinted. It pulled away when he looked directly at it. Coincidence had to be. But the next morning, the same car was parked outside his apartment. And when he dropped Chloe at school, it followed them for 3 blocks before turning away. Someone was watching him. Ethan called Sloan from a coffee shop using a burner phone he bought with cash. We have a problem. What kind of problem? Someone's following me. Black sedan, no plates I could see. They're watching my daughter's school. Sloan's voice went cold. Grant's escalating. He knows we're building a case. If he's willing to threaten my daughter, he won't touch her. Too obvious, too risky. But he's trying to scare you into backing off. There's a pause. Where's Chloe now? At school. I'm on my way there to pull her out. Stay visible. Stay public. I'm sending private security to watch the school in your apartment, and I'm moving the board presentation up to tomorrow. We end this before Grant gets more desperate. Sloan, if something happens to Chloe, nothing will happen to her. I promise you that. Her voice softened slightly. Trust me, Ethan. He did. Against all logic, against the paranoia born from years of betrayal, he trusted her. That night, Sloan's security team confirmed what they both suspected. Grant had hired a private investigator to watch Ethan and his daughter. Nothing illegal yet, but the intent was clear. Apply pressure, make Ethan back down. He's more scared than I thought, Sloan said during their midnight meeting in her office, which means the evidence we have is even more damaging than we realized. Or he's willing to do anything to protect himself. Then we move faster than he can react. Sloan pulled up the final presentation. 57 pages of documented fraud, complete with transaction records, offshore account traces, and communication logs. This destroys him. Tomorrow morning, we present to the board. Grant will be arrested by noon. But morning brought something neither of them expected. Ethan woke to his phone ringing at 5 a.m. It was the director of the building's overnight care. Mr. Graves, this is Maria. Chloe was found unresponsive. Her blood sugar is dangerously high. The paramedics are taking her to Mount Sinai Hospital. They suspect ketoacidosis. You need to get there immediately. Ethan's world stopped. Ketoacidosis. The word every parent of a diabetic child fears. When blood sugar gets so high that the blood becomes acidic, it can lead to coma to death. He called Sloan while running to the hospital. Chloe's in the ER. Critical condition. I can't do the board presentation. Go to your daughter. I'll handle the board. Sloan, you need my testimony to explain the technical evidence. Your daughter needs you more. Go. We'll figure the rest out later. Ethan ran through pre-dawn Manhattan, his heart pounding. Please let her be okay. Please. At Mount Sinai's ER, a doctor met him with a grim expression. Mr. Graves, your daughter's condition is serious. Her blood sugar was over 500 when she arrived. We're working to stabilize her, but she's unconscious. The next few hours are critical. Can I see her? Of course. Chloe looked impossibly small in the hospital bed. IV lines running into both arms, monitors beeping with her vital signs. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow. Ethan took her hand. I'm here, baby. Daddy's here. You're going to be okay. But he didn't know if that was true, didn't know if she'd wake up, didn't know if this was the crisis he'd feared since her diagnosis. His phone buzzed with a text from Sloan. Board presentation moved to this afternoon. Grant requested the delay, claiming document verification needed. I think he's buying time. Call when you can. Ethan couldn't think about Grant or fraud or board presentations. His entire world was the small girl in the hospital bed fighting for every breath. Hours passed. Doctors came and went. Chloe's blood sugar slowly dropped from critical to merely dangerous. By noon, she was stable enough that the immediate crisis had passed. She'll need to stay several days for monitoring, the doctor explained. But she's going to recover. You got her here in time. Ethan collapsed in the chair next to her bed, his whole body shaking with relief. Chloe was alive. She was going to be okay. His phone rang. Sloan, how is she? Stable, going to recover. But she'll be hospitalized for days, thank God. Sloan's relief was genuine. I'm glad she's okay. But Ethan, we have a massive problem. Grant moved the board presentation to 4:00 p.m. today, and I just discovered why. He's been building a counter case against you. He's planning to present you as a disgruntled former analyst, trying to frame him for fraud you committed. That's insane. He has fake evidence, manipulated transaction logs that make it look like you accessed Hong Kong accounts months ago before you even worked here. He's going to claim you hacked our systems while working as a janitor, stole money, and now you're blaming him to cover your tracks. Ethan's blood ran cold. It was Harrison and Pierce all over again. The same playbook. Find a scapegoat, fabricate evidence, destroy them before they could fight back. Can you prove the evidence is fake? Not in 3 hours. Our digital forensics team needs days to trace the modifications. By then, Grant will have convinced the board to fire you and possibly press charges. Then we're finished. Not if you come to the presentation. You're the only one who can explain the technical details well enough to cast doubt on Grant's narrative. You're the only one who can prove in real time which evidence is authentic. Sloan, I can't leave my daughter, I know, and I would never ask you to choose between her and this job. There's a pause. But if you don't come, Grant wins. He frames you for massive fraud, destroys your reputation permanently, and walks away with $287 million while you go to prison. Is that what you want for Chloe? Her father in jail, unable to care for her. The choice was impossible. Stay with his daughter when she needed him most, or fight for the future that lets him stay with her forever. Chloe's eyes fluttered open. Daddy, I'm right here, baby. I don't feel good. I know, but the doctors are making you better. You're going to be fine. She closed her eyes again, drifting back to medicated sleep. Ethan looked at her small face at the monitors, keeping her alive at everything he stood to lose if Grant succeeded. He called Sloan back. I'll be there, but I need a favor, anything. Send your security team to watch Chloe's hospital room. If Grant knows I'm testifying against him, I don't trust what he might do. Already done. 3 guards on rotation plus a private nurse. Your daughter is safer than the president right now. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just come destroy Grant Westfield. Ethan left Chloe with a promise he'd be back soon. The hospital was 20 minutes from Merritt Capital. He took a cab because his hands were shaking too hard to drive. At 3:45 p.m., he walked into the executive conference room where Merritt Capital's 12-person board was assembled. These were the people who controlled billions in assets, who determined the firm's direction, who could end his career with a single vote. Grant was already presenting his voice smooth and confident, which is why I believe Mr. Graves represents a significant security risk. The evidence clearly shows he accessed confidential systems going back 9 months long before his official employment. He used his janitor position to steal credentials and embezzle funds, then fabricated this entire fraud investigation to cover his tracks when I began noticing discrepancies. Board members studied documents, their faces skeptical but attentive. Grant had done his homework. The fake evidence looked convincing. Then Ethan walked in. Grant's confidence faltered for just a moment. Mr. Graves, how's your daughter? She's alive, which is what matters. Ethan took a seat. Unlike the truth which you've been killing for 2 years. That's a serious accusation from someone currently trying to frame me for crimes you committed. Grant's voice hardened. I have forensic proof of your illegal access. Ethan looked at the board. I have evidence that proves Grant Westfield has been systematically embezzling from Merritt Capital for 2 years. Over $287 million hidden across offshore accounts, the same pattern I identified at Harrison and Pierce 7 years ago, which is why he's been so desperate to discredit me since I arrived. The board chair, Dorothy Hughes, raised her hand. Mr. Graves, you're making extraordinary claims. Mr. Westfield has been with this firm for 8 years. His record is exemplary. So was his deception. Ethan pulled out his laptop. Let me show you something. The evidence Grant presented claims I accessed Hong Kong accounts 9 months ago. But here's the metadata from those files. He turned his screen toward the board. They were created yesterday. The timestamps were backdated, but the file creation logs don't lie. Grant made this fake evidence yesterday after he realized Sloan and I were investigating him. That's absurd. Grant's forehead glistened with sweat. Those are legitimate forensic findings. From which security firm? Because Merritt Capital doesn't have forensic contracts with anyone. You made these documents yourself. Grant's mask slipped completely. This is ridiculous. You're a disgraced analyst who was fired for fraud, now working as a janitor. And you expect the board to take your word over mine. Not my word. The evidence. Ethan pulled up the side-by-side comparison. Here are the real transaction logs from Hong Kong accounts. Note the pattern of small withdrawals, always under audit thresholds, routed through shell companies, registered to addresses that don't exist. Now here are the same transactions with your approval signatures. You authorized every single fraudulent transfer. The board members leaned forward, studying the data. Dorothy Hughes's expression hardened. Grant, these signatures are yours. Forged. Grant insisted. Obviously forged by someone trying to frame me. Then explain this. Sloan stood, her voice like ice. I personally verified these signatures against our authentication database. They match your biometric patterns perfectly. Unless Mr. Graves somehow stole your fingerprints and retinal scans while mopping floors, these signatures are authentic. The room went silent. Grant looked around at faces that were no longer sympathetic, no longer believing. You're making a mistake, his voice rising. This janitor is manipulating you, manipulating all of you. He's a con artist who... Enough. Dorothy Hughes silenced him with a gesture. Mr. Westfield, this board is suspending your authority immediately pending a full investigation. Security will escort you out. You're not to access any company systems or contact any employees. Am I clear? You're really going to believe a janitor over me? A janitor? Grant's composure was completely gone. Now his voice desperate. I built this firm's Asian portfolio. I brought in billions in revenue, and you're going to destroy me because some poor nobody made up a story. No, Sloan said quietly. We're going to investigate you because the evidence is undeniable. You stole from my firm. You betrayed my trust. And you tried to destroy an innocent man to cover it. She nodded to security. Get him out of here. As guards escorted Grant from the room, his protests fading down the hallway, Dorothy Hughes turned to Ethan. Mr. Graves, on behalf of this board, I apologize. We almost made a catastrophic mistake. You were deceived by someone very good at deception. Nevertheless, Dorothy glanced at the other board members. I think I speak for everyone when I say we're grateful you had the courage to expose this fraud despite significant personal risk. Ethan stood. If we're done here, I need to get back to the hospital. My daughter go. Sloan touched his arm briefly. We'll handle the rest. The board will vote on formal actions tomorrow. For now, just be with Chloe. Ethan left the building in a daze. It was over. Grant was exposed. The fraud was documented. Justice was finally happening. But he wouldn't feel relief until he was back at Mount Sinai, back at Chloe's bedside, making sure she was really okay. When he arrived at the hospital, Chloe was awake and alert, sitting up in bed with better color in her cheeks. Daddy, you came back. Of course I came back. I promised, didn't I? He hugged her carefully, mindful of the IV lines. How are you feeling? Better. The doctor says I can maybe go home tomorrow. That's great news, baby. Was your work thing okay? Did you win? Ethan smiled. Yeah, I think we won. 3 days later, Chloe was discharged with adjusted insulin protocols and careful instructions for monitoring. Ethan took a week off work to care for her, making sure her blood sugar stabilized. During that week, the news broke. Major financial outlets reported the arrest of Grant Westfield, former chief investment officer of Merritt Capital, on charges of embezzling over $287 million. The SEC launched investigations. Grant's assets were frozen. His bail was set at $10 million, which he couldn't make because his hidden accounts were being seized. The story became bigger when details emerged about how the fraud was discovered by a former analyst named Ethan Graves, who was working as a janitor while raising his diabetic daughter alone. Human interest pieces appeared in newspapers. Social media exploded with support. Someone started a GoFundMe for Chloe's medical expenses that raised $200,000 in 48 hours. Ethan ignored all of it. He cared about one thing: his daughter recovering. Sloan visited on the third day with flowers and a stuffed bear for Chloe. Miss Merritt, Chloe grinned. Daddy talks about you all the time. He does. Sloan glanced at Ethan with amusement. He says you're really smart and really pretty, and you gave him his job back. Ethan's face burned. Chloe, maybe don't repeat everything, but it's true, you did say she's pretty. I heard you tell Uncle Ben on the phone. Sloan laughed, a genuine sound that Ethan rarely heard. Well, thank you for the honest character reference. After Chloe fell asleep, Sloan and Ethan sat in the hospital room's uncomfortable chairs talking quietly. The board voted to promote you, Sloan said. Senior analyst position, $120,000 salary, plus a special bonus for exposing the fraud. You saved the firm over $200 million in potential losses. I just did what needed to be done. Most people don't. Most people see corruption and look away because it's safer. You risked everything to tell the truth. She met his eyes. That takes a special kind of courage or a special kind of stupidity. Maybe both. Sloan smiled. But I'm glad you were stupid enough to speak up. For what it's worth, you've changed how I think about talent and worth. I spent my whole career believing success meant you were smart and failure meant you weren't. You proved that's wrong. Intelligence has nothing to do with circumstances. You gave me a chance when no one else would. That means more than any promotion. I gave you a chance because you were undeniably brilliant. The rest was just me getting past my own biases. She paused. When Chloe's fully recovered, I'd like to take you both to dinner somewhere that isn't a Thai restaurant at midnight. Is this professional or personal? I'm still deciding. Sloan said, echoing their first dinner conversation. But I'm leaning toward personal. Good, because so am I. 6 months passed like a dream that refused to become a nightmare. Grant Westfield pleaded guilty to multiple counts of securities fraud and embezzlement. He was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. The $287 million was recovered and returned to Merritt Capital's clients. Ethan thrived in his senior analyst role. His insights reshaped how the firm evaluated emerging markets. He became known not just as the janitor who exposed fraud, but as one of the most talented analysts in Manhattan. Headhunters called weekly with offers he politely declined. Chloe's health stabilized with better insurance and consistent care. She started art classes on weekends, and her drawings covered Ethan's new apartment, a two-bedroom in a better neighborhood with actual closets and windows that didn't rattle in the wind. And Sloan. Sloan became something Ethan never expected a partner in every sense of the word. They were careful at first. Dinner dates that could technically be business meetings. Coffee breaks that lasted too long to be innocent. Conversations that drifted from markets to movies to the kind of personal stories people only share when they're falling in love. The relationship developed slowly, naturally, like two people who'd both been hurt, learning to trust again. Sloan introduced Ethan to her world of galas and fundraisers and high society events, where he was initially uncomfortable until he realized these people weren't that different from anywhere else, just richer and more likely to talk about their portfolios. Ethan introduced Sloan to Chloe, carefully making sure his daughter understood this wasn't just daddy's boss, but someone who might become more important. Chloe approved immediately, declaring that Ms. Merritt is super nice and really pretty, and she bought me the best art supplies ever. By the time autumn arrived, they weren't hiding the relationship anymore. Office gossip ran wild. The billionaire CEO dating the former janitor she hired. Some people thought it was romantic, others thought it was scandalous. Neither Sloan nor Ethan cared. One evening, Sloan took Ethan to the observation deck at Top of the Rock. Manhattan spread out beneath them in a glittering grid of ambition and possibility. "I used to come here when I was building the firm," Sloan said. "I'd look down at the city and think about conquering it, about proving I was better than everyone who said I'd fail. Did you conquer it? I built a billion-dollar company. I have everything I worked for." She turned to face him. "But standing here with you, I realize how lonely that success was. I spent 15 years winning, and I never stopped to ask what I was winning for. And now I know it's not about conquering the city. It's about finding someone who sees you as more than your success or your failures. Someone who values who you are, not what you've achieved." Ethan took her hands. "You gave me my life back. You believed in me when no one else would. You fought for me even when it would have been easier to let me go. You did the same for me. You saved my company, exposed corruption I was too blind to see, and showed me that real intelligence doesn't wear expensive suits." She smiled. "Plus my board loves you." Dorothy Hughes asked when we're getting married. She did not. She did. Apparently our relationship is adorably unexpected and good for company morale. Ethan laughed. "Well, when a board member suggests marriage, is that a proposal?" "Maybe." "Would you say yes?" Sloan pretended to consider. "I'd need to review the terms, negotiate conditions, draft appropriate contracts." "Of course." Very professional. "But assuming the terms are favorable." She kissed him. "Yes, I'd say yes." They stood there as the city lights flickered to life below them. Two people who found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built something neither expected. 1 year later, they were married in a small ceremony at Central Park. Chloe was the flower girl, taking her role very seriously. Jennifer was Sloan's maid of honor. Dorothy Hughes attended and cried during the vows. Grant Westfield watched coverage of the wedding on the television in his federal prison cell, bitter and alone, understanding too late that the janitor he tried to destroy was always smarter than him. The reception was held at the same Thai restaurant where Sloan and Ethan had their first dinner. She insisted on it, wanting to remember where everything changed, where a billionaire CEO and a janitor became just two people talking honestly over pad thai and spring rolls. Ethan gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. "I used to think success meant going back to what I lost. The career, the reputation, the life I had before everything fell apart. But I was wrong. Success wasn't going back. It was moving forward into something I never imagined. Something better than anything I lost." He looked at Sloan, who was wearing a simple white dress and smiling like she just won the lottery. "I found someone who sees brilliance where others see obstacles, who gives chances when others give up, who proved that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who makes you want to be better." He raised his glass. "To my wife, the smartest, strongest, most beautiful person I've ever known. Thank you for forcing a janitor to speak. It changed my life." Chloe, sitting at the head table in her purple dress, shouted, And mine too. Now I have a mommy again. The room erupted in applause and laughter. Sloan wiped tears from her eyes. Her carefully controlled CEO mask completely gone, replaced by genuine joy. Later, as the reception wound down and guests began leaving, Ethan found himself standing on the sidewalk where he stood that first night, dazed and confused about what had just happened. Sloan joined him, linking her arm through his. What are you thinking about that night when you forced me to give investment advice as a joke? I thought my life was over. I thought you were going to humiliate me and fire me and I'd lose everything. I was going to. That was absolutely the plan. Sloan leaned her head on his shoulder. But then you opened your mouth and everything I believed about intelligence and worth and who deserves opportunities just exploded. You destroyed my worldview in 45 seconds. Sorry about that, don't be. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. She smiled. Turns out the janitor was smarter than the billionaire all along. I don't know about that. I do. You saw value in yourself when nobody else did. You kept studying, kept learning, kept believing you were worth something, even when the entire world said you weren't. That's wisdom I never had. They stood there on a Manhattan street as cabs honked and people rushed past, and the city lived its relentless, indifferent life. Two people who shouldn't have met, shouldn't have connected, shouldn't have fallen in love. Except they did. Because sometimes the universe gets it right. Sometimes the person you underestimate is exactly the person you need. Sometimes the janitor listening at the door has more answers than everyone in the room. And sometimes when a billionaire CEO forces someone to speak expecting a joke, they get the truth that changes everything instead. Chloe ran out of the restaurant, her face covered in cake frosting. Daddy, Mom, they're cutting the cake again, and you're missing it. We're coming, baby. Ethan scooped her up. Can't miss the cake. As they walked back inside, Sloan caught Ethan's hand. I love you. I love you too. No, I mean, I really love you. The kind of love where I can't imagine my life without you in it. Where everything before feels like practice for finding you. Ethan stopped walking right there on the sidewalk with their daughter in his arms and wedding guests visible through the restaurant windows. He kissed Sloan like they were the only two people in the city. I know exactly what you mean because I feel the same way. They went back inside to cut cake and dance badly and celebrate the impossible love story that started with fraud accusations and janitor's uniforms, and a woman who chose to listen when she could have chosen to dismiss. 15 years later, the story was still told at Merritt Capital as legend. How the firm's CEO married the janitor who saved the company and exposed massive fraud. How their daughter Chloe, the little girl with diabetes who inspired her father's courage, graduated from Yale's art program and opened a gallery showcasing work by artists from disadvantaged backgrounds. How Sloan and Ethan built not just a successful firm, but a family that proved intelligence, worth, and love have nothing to do with where you start, only with who you choose to become. And how sometimes the most valuable advice comes from the person nobody expects, the one cleaning floors, while everyone else talks, the one listening, while everyone else performs, the one who sees patterns nobody else notices because they're too busy assuming they already know everything. The janitor who became a senior partner. The billionaire who learned humility. The daughter who inspired courage. The love story that started with the cruelest test and ended with the most beautiful truth. That brilliance doesn't announce itself with credentials and corner offices. Sometimes it pushes a mop bucket and waits quietly for someone brave enough to ask its opinion. And when someone finally does, everything changes. But their story didn't end with a fairy tale wedding. Life continued with all its complications and unexpected turns. 3 months after the honeymoon, Rebecca, Ethan's ex-wife and Chloe's biological mother, reappeared. The news of Ethan's dramatic rise from janitor to senior analyst at Merritt Capital, his marriage to CEO Sloan Merritt, and the GoFundMe for Chloe's medical expenses had reached California. Now Rebecca wanted back in their lives. Ethan received her email on a Tuesday morning. The subject line read, "We need to talk about our daughter." Our daughter, not your daughter or Chloe Bondeville. Our daughter, as if she hadn't walked away 5 years ago when things got difficult, as if she hadn't reduced her parenting to a single birthday card each year. He showed the email to Sloan that evening. Her face remained carefully neutral as she read it, but Ethan saw the slight tightening around her eyes, the same expression she wore when evaluating a risky investment proposition. What are you going to do? I don't know. She walked away. She doesn't get to walk back in just because things are better now. Ethan paced their living room. But legally, she's still Chloe's mother. She has rights. Sloane sat perfectly still, her voice measured. Do you think she genuinely wants to reconnect with Chloe? Or is this about the money and publicity? I want to believe she cares about Chloe, but her timing is suspicious. The email mentioned she saw us in Fortune magazine. She didn't reach out when Chloe was in the hospital. She reached out when she saw our picture in a financial publication. We should meet with her, Sloane finally said. Hear what she has to say before making any decisions. But we do it together and we decide together what's best for Chloe. The meeting was arranged at a neutral location, a private room at an upscale Manhattan restaurant. Rebecca arrived 15 minutes late, dressed in designer clothes that suggested Silicon Valley success. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw Sloane sitting beside Ethan. I was hoping we could talk privately. Rebecca's smile didn't reach her eyes. Family matters, Sloane is family. Ethan's voice was firm. Anything you want to say to me, you can say in front of my wife. Rebecca's smile faltered. Fine, I'll be direct. I've been watching Chloe from a distance. She's growing up and I think she needs her mother in her life. I want to establish regular visitation. Maybe have her come stay with me in California during school breaks. After 5 years of almost no contact, Ethan leaned forward. You left when she was diagnosed with diabetes, when she needed her mother most. Now that someone else has been handling the hard parts of parenting, you want to swoop in for the fun weekends? People change, Ethan. I made mistakes. I was young and scared and unprepared for a child with special needs. Rebecca's voice softened. But I've grown up. I'm more stable now. I can provide for her in ways I couldn't before. Sloane, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. What prompted this change of heart specifically now? As I mentioned in my email, I saw the article, yes, the Fortune profile about Merit Capital's power couple. Sloane's tone was conversational, but her eyes were sharp. Not the hospital GoFundMe that raised money for Chloe's medical care. Not the news coverage about her critical condition 3 months ago. But a business article featuring our wedding announcement. Rebecca flushed. I didn't know she was hospitalized. Because you weren't in her life. Ethan's voice was quiet, controlled. The school doesn't have your contact information. The hospital doesn't have you listed as next of kin. You removed yourself so completely that when your daughter nearly died, no one thought to call you. A tense silence fell over the table. Rebecca's composure cracked just slightly. I made a mistake leaving. A terrible mistake. But she's still my daughter. I have legal rights. And what about moral rights, Sloane asked. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're interested in Chloe now that her father has status and financial security. Now that being associated with the Graves Merritt family might benefit you socially or financially. That's not true, Rebecca's voice rose. I miss my daughter. I want to make amends. If that's true, Ethan said, then you'll understand why we need to proceed carefully. Chloe has been through enough trauma. She can't handle another parent walking in and out of her life based on convenience. I wouldn't do that. You already did. Ethan held Rebecca's gaze. Here's what I propose. Supervised visits once a month to start. We'll see how Chloe responds. If it goes well, we can discuss expanding the arrangement. But Chloe's emotional well-being comes first. Always. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. And if I go to court instead, fight for joint custody. Sloane placed her hand over Ethan's. Then you'll be making it clear this isn't about Chloe's well-being, but about your own agenda. And you'll be fighting against not just Ethan, but Merit Capital's entire legal team. I'm sure your lawyers would advise you about the odds of success given your abandonment history. The threat hung in the air, unspoken but unmistakable. Rebecca's shoulders sagged slightly. 1 visit per month seems reasonable. To start, Rebecca's voice had lost its edge. When can I see her? We'll talk to Chloe first. Explain the situation. If she's open to seeing you, we'll arrange a meeting. This is her choice too. After Rebecca left, Ethan and Sloane sat in silence for a long moment. Thank you for backing me up, Ethan finally said. I was afraid that I'd feel threatened, that I'd worry about my place in Chloe's life. Sloane shook her head. I don't need a biological connection to love Chloe or to be her mother, but I do need to protect her from people who might hurt her, even especially if that person is her birth mother. That night they talked with Chloe about Rebecca's request. The 8-year-old listened solemnly, her eyes wide behind her glasses. So my other mom wants to see me. Yes, sweetheart. Ethan sat beside her on the bed. But it's completely up to you. If you don't want to see her, you don't have to. Would it make you sad if I did want to see her? Chloe looked from Ethan to Sloane, her young face troubled. Sloane sat on Chloe's other side. No, honey. We want you to know your birth mother if that's what you want. Your dad and I will support whatever decision you make. Chloe was quiet for a moment, considering this with the seriousness only children can bring to big questions. Can I think about it? Of course. Ethan brushed her hair back from her forehead. Take all the time you need. The first meeting between Rebecca and Chloe was awkward. They met at a children's museum with Ethan and Sloane nearby, but giving them space to interact. Rebecca had brought an expensive doll as a gift, which Chloe accepted politely, but didn't seem particularly excited about. The conversation was stilted, full of Rebecca's overeager questions and Chloe's one-word answers. After an hour, Chloe walked back to where Ethan and Sloane were sitting. I want to go home now. On the ride home, Chloe was uncharacteristically quiet. Finally, she asked, is she going to be part of our family now? Only if you want her to be, Sloane answered. And even then, she wouldn't live with us. She lives in California. I don't think I want more visits. Chloe's voice was small. She doesn't know about my insulin pump or what to do if my sugar gets low. And she didn't ask about my art or my school or anything I like. She just kept saying how pretty I am and how much money she's going to spend on me. Ethan and Sloane exchanged glances. We'll let her know you need more time, Ethan said carefully. But Chloe shook her head. No, I don't need more time. I already have a mom. She reached for Sloane's hand. A real mom who knows how to take care of me and loves me even when I'm sick. I don't need another one. 2 weeks later, Rebecca called Ethan furious. What did you tell her? Why doesn't she want to see me again? We didn't tell her anything. She made her own decision. She's 8 years old. She doesn't make decisions like that without influence. Rebecca's voice was shrill. This is your wife's doing, is it? It's poisoning my daughter against me. Sloane had nothing to do with it. Chloe is perceptive. She sensed you were more interested in the idea of being her mother than in actually knowing her. Kids pick up on authenticity, or the lack of it. This isn't over, Ethan. Rebecca's voice turned cold. I have rights, and so does Chloe. Ethan's voice was equally firm. The right to choose who she wants in her life. The right to protect herself from people who have hurt her before. You walked away once. Don't make it worse by forcing your way back in where you're not wanted. The call ended with Rebecca threatening legal action, but the lawsuit never materialized. Instead, 3 months later, a formal letter arrived from Rebecca's attorney relinquishing all parental rights and agreeing to Sloane's adoption of Chloe in exchange for a substantial financial settlement. Ethan was incensed. She's selling her daughter. This proves exactly what kind of person she is. Sloane was more pragmatic. She's giving Chloe what she needs, stability and legal protection. Her motivations don't matter as much as the outcome. So we pay her off, Ethan paced the living room. That feels wrong on every level. We're not paying for Chloe. We're paying to end this cleanly without dragging her through a legal battle. Think of it as an investment in her peace of mind, in our family's future. In the end, they agreed to the settlement with strict confidentiality clauses and a complete termination of Rebecca's parental rights. The adoption was finalized on Chloe's 9th birthday, a coincidence that felt like cosmic approval. When they told Chloe, her reaction was simple but profound. So now you're really my mom, like forever official, yes. Sloane knelt to Chloe's level. Forever official. Chloe wrapped her arms around Sloane's neck. Good, because you already were anyway. That night after Chloe was asleep, Ethan found Sloane standing in the doorway of their daughter's bedroom, watching her sleep. Are you okay? He wrapped his arms around her waist. I was just thinking about how differently things could have gone. If you hadn't been mopping outside that conference room. If I hadn't called you in as a joke. If you hadn't had the courage to speak up. Some would call it fate. Ethan rested his chin on her shoulder. I don't believe in fate. I believe in recognizing patterns. In seeing value where others miss it. In second chances. She turned in his arms. In finding family in unexpected places. Their lips met in a kiss that still felt new, even after all this time. A testament to second chances and unexpected patterns in the family they'd built from the ruins of their separate lives. Not all fairy tales start with once upon a time. Some begin with a mop bucket and a boardroom full of skeptics. Some are written in spreadsheets, in hospital rooms, and late-night Thai restaurants. Some unfold in the space between what we've lost and what we never knew we needed. This was their fairy tale. Not perfect, not easy, but theirs, built on truth and courage and the audacity to believe in second chances. A CEO and a janitor and a little girl with an insulin pump, creating something magical from the most ordinary ingredients. Trust forgiveness and the willingness to see beyond the surface to the brilliance that sometimes hides in plain sight. The Rebecca incident strengthened their bond as a family, but it also exposed vulnerabilities in their public image. The financial press, always hungry for a scandal involving high-profile figures, caught wind of the settlement. Headlines questioned whether Merritt Capital's fairy tale couple had bought their daughter, whether Sloan had used her wealth to steamroll a birth mother's rights. The PR team advised them to ignore it, insisting the story would die without fuel. For once, Sloan didn't take professional advice. Instead, she invited a respected journalist to their home for an exclusive interview, not about the adoption, but about juvenile diabetes research and the foundation they had established to fund it. When the inevitable question about Rebecca arose, Sloan was prepared. Families come in many forms. Ours began unconventionally, but at its heart are the same things that define any family love commitment in putting our child's needs above all else. We won't discuss private legal matters, but I will say that every decision we've made has been guided by what's best for Chloe, not what's easiest or most convenient for us. The reporter pressed. But the financial settlement was a private matter that allowed all parties to move forward with clarity and legal certainty. Ethan stepped in, his voice calm but firm. Anyone who's navigated family court knows that prolonged custody battles hurt children most of all. We chose a path that spared our daughter that trauma. I won't apologize for prioritizing her emotional well-being. The resulting article was unexpectedly thoughtful. Instead of scandal-mongering, it explored the complexities of modern families, the challenges of raising a child with a chronic medical condition, and the foundation's work funding diabetes research. The sidebar about their unusual love story, titled The Janitor and the CEO, became something of a modern fairy tale in financial circles, inspiring rather than scandalizing. The foundation became Sloan's passion project. Merritt Capital had always engaged in philanthropy, but it had been strategic, calculated to enhance the corporate image. The Graves Merritt Diabetes Research Foundation was different, personal, driven by their experiences with Chloe's condition. Sloan approached it with the same intensity she brought to investment decisions. She recruited top endocrinologists to the advisory board, established rigorous criteria for research grants, and leveraged her connections to secure additional funding. Within 3 years, the foundation was sponsoring breakthrough research into artificial pancreas technology and cellular therapies that might one day cure type 1 diabetes. For Chloe's 11th birthday, Sloan organized a benefit gala that raised $4.3 million in a single evening. The guest list included medical researchers, financial titans, and families affected by juvenile diabetes. Chloe, wearing a blue dress she'd helped design, gave a short speech that left few dry eyes in the room. I used to think having diabetes made me different in a bad way, but now I know it made me part of a community of really strong kids, and it helped me find my mom. She smiled at Sloan. Sometimes the hardest things in your life lead to the best things. That's what my dad always says. Ethan, watching from the side of the stage, felt a surge of pride so intense it was almost painful. His daughter was growing into a remarkable young woman, compassionate, articulate, and wise beyond her years. And she was thriving under Sloan's influence, developing a confidence and poise that complemented her natural creativity. After the gala, as they were walking to the car, Chloe between them holding both their hands, Sloan leaned close to Ethan. Did you ever imagine this is where cleaning that floor would lead you? Not in a million years. But I wouldn't change a thing. Not even the part where I humiliated you in front of 43 investors, especially not that part. It was the best humiliation of my life. Meanwhile, in a federal prison in upstate New York, Grant Westfield followed the Graves Merritt family's rise with bitter fascination. The financial publications he was allowed to read frequently featured Sloan and Ethan, their foundation, their investment strategies, their growing influence in both Wall Street and philanthropic circles. One article included a photo from the gala, the three of them laughing together, Chloe looking up at Sloan with adoration. The caption read, "Merritt Capital power couple Sloan Merritt and Ethan Graves with daughter Chloe at Diabetes Research Foundation Gala." Grant tore the page out and pinned it to the wall of his cell. A daily reminder of how thoroughly he had been outplayed by a man he had once dismissed as nothing more than a janitor. A man who now occupied the position that should have been his, married to the woman whose respect he had craved, living the life he had tried to steal. In his darkest moments, Grant plotted revenge scenarios. But reality always intruded. He was 5 years into an 18-year sentence. His assets were gone, his reputation destroyed, his contacts scattered. The man who had once moved billions with a phone call now had to beg his sister to add money to his commissary account. The cruel irony wasn't lost on him. He had fallen as far as Ethan had risen. The symmetry would be poetic if it weren't so painful. As Chloe grew older, her artistic talents blossomed. By 13, her paintings were sophisticated enough to draw attention from her art teachers. By 15, she was winning regional competitions. When she was 16, a small gallery in Brooklyn featured her work in a group show of young artists. Ethan and Sloan attended the opening, trying to blend into the background to let Chloe have her moment. But in the New York art scene, the CEO of Merit Capital and her analyst husband couldn't go unnoticed. A gallery patron recognized them and asked loudly if they had used their connections to get their daughter into the show. Before either could respond, Chloe stepped forward. Actually, the gallery owner didn't know who my parents were until after she selected my work. I submitted under my mother's maiden name, Chen, precisely to avoid this kind of accusation. Her voice was calm but firm. I'd be happy to discuss my artistic influences or technique, but I won't defend my right to be here. My work speaks for itself. The patron muttered an apology and moved away. Sloan squeezed Chloe's hand. I don't remember teaching you that level of poise under pressure. You didn't have to teach it. Chloe smiled. I've been watching you handle tough situations my whole life. Both of you. Later that night, Sloan found Ethan in their home office going through old photos of Chloe. When did she become so grown up? While we were busy blinking, I think. Sloan sat beside him. She handled that situation at the gallery like a seasoned professional. She handled it like you would have, with the perfect balance of confidence and class. Sloan leaned her head on his shoulder. I keep waiting for this to feel normal, having a family, being someone's wife and mother. It still surprises me sometimes how much I love both of you, how different my life is from what I planned. Better or worse, different. Richer, more complicated, and more rewarding. I used to think success was something you achieved on your own, a solo climb to the top of the mountain. Sloan gestured to the photos spread across the desk. Chloe, at various ages, the three of them in different settings, a family built from unlikely beginnings. Now I know the view's better when you have someone to share it with. Ethan pulled her close. Even if that someone started out mopping your floors, especially then. She kissed him lightly. It keeps me humble. When Chloe was 17, she was accepted to Yale's art program with a substantial scholarship. The decision to let her go was harder than either Ethan or Sloan had anticipated. They had spent so long protecting her, monitoring her health, building their family unit, that the prospect of her independence was terrifying. The night before they were to drive her to New Haven, Sloan found Ethan checking Chloe's diabetes supplies for the 5th time. I think we've packed enough testing strips to last until graduation. Sloan leaned against the doorframe. I know. I just can't help worrying. She's never managed this on her own before. She won't be on her own. She'll have the university health center, her roommate knows about her condition, and she can video call us anytime. Plus the new continuous glucose monitor connects to our phones. We'll probably know her blood sugar levels better than she does. Ethan sat on the edge of Chloe's bed. It's not just the diabetes. It's everything. She's been the center of our world for so long. First, she was all I had, and then she was what brought us together. What if she goes off to college and realizes she doesn't need us anymore? Sloan sat beside him, taking his hand. That's exactly what's supposed to happen. We've done our job right if she feels confident enough to fly solo. When did you get so wise about parenting? I had a good teacher. She bumped his shoulder with hers. A father who would mop floors to keep his daughter healthy, who risked everything to give her a better life. I learned from watching you, Ethan. He squeezed her hand. I never thought I'd say this, but thank you for humiliating me in that boardroom, for forcing me to speak when every instinct said to stay silent, for seeing something in me when I was just the guy with the mop. No, Sloan's voice was firm. You were never just the guy with the mop. You were always the man who saved Merit Capital, the man who changed my life, the man who showed me that real worth isn't measured by the job title on your door or the size of your office. It's measured by the courage of your convictions and the strength of your love. Outside Chloe's room, neither noticed their daughter listening, a small smile on her face. In her hand was a wrapped package, a painting she had worked on secretly for months. A triptych showing three scenes: a man in a janitor's uniform standing in a boardroom doorway, a little girl in a hospital bed with a woman and man holding her hands, and finally the three of them together looking out over a city skyline. She would give it to them tomorrow after they helped her move into her dorm. A reminder that she was carrying their story with her, that their unlikely beginning had shaped her understanding of what was possible in life. That sometimes the most important people are the ones no one notices, and the most valuable lessons come from the most unexpected teachers. That sometimes a janitor with a mop knows more than a room full of experts. That sometimes a CEO with everything still has an empty space waiting to be filled. That sometimes a little girl with a medical condition brings two unlikely people together and creates a family where none existed before. And that sometimes the most beautiful pattern of all is the one we don't recognize until we step back and see the whole picture. The pattern of lives intersecting at exactly the right moment, changing each other in ways no one could have predicted, creating a design more perfect than anything we could have planned. Ethan helped Chloe carry the last box into her Yale dormitory room, trying to hide the ache in his chest. 18 years had passed in the blink of an eye. His frightened little girl with the insulin pump had transformed into a confident young woman with dreams and talents of her own. The diabetes was still there, but it had become just one facet of her identity rather than its defining feature. Sloan was arranging Chloe's medical supplies in the desk drawer, meticulously organizing testing strips and insulin vials. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, but Ethan noticed the slight tremor. She was struggling too. "Okay, I think that's the last of it." Chloe surveyed the room, her roommate not due to arrive until tomorrow. "I know what you're both thinking, but I'll be fine. I've been managing my diabetes for 14 years. Yale has an excellent health center, and New Haven is only 90 minutes from Manhattan." Sloan straightened up, composing herself. "We know you'll be fine. That doesn't make it easier to leave you here." Chloe reached into her backpack and pulled out a flat package wrapped in simple brown paper. "Before you go, I made something for you." She handed it to Ethan. "Don't open it until you get home. It's, well, you'll see." The drive back to Manhattan was quiet, the wrapped package sitting between them on the console. Ethan gripped the steering wheel too tightly, fighting the urge to turn around. Sloan stared out the window, uncharacteristically silent. "She's going to be okay." Ethan finally broke the silence as they crossed into New York. "We raised her to be independent." "I know." Sloan's voice was soft. "It's not her I'm worried about. It's us. For 18 years, she's been the center of our universe. The reason you took that janitor job. The reason I gave you a chance. The bridge that brought us together. And now, we figure out who we are without her daily presence. We adapt, like we've always done." Ethan reached for Sloan's hand. "And we remember that she's not really gone. She's just expanding her world beyond us. That's what we wanted for her." Back at their Manhattan apartment, they sat together on the sofa and carefully unwrapped Chloe's gift. Ethan's breath caught when he saw the triptych. The first panel showed him in his janitor's uniform, standing in the Merit Capital boardroom doorway. The second depicted Chloe in her hospital bed with Ethan and Sloan holding her hands. The third showed the three of them on a rooftop looking out over the Manhattan skyline. The technical skill was impressive, but what struck them both was how she'd captured the emotions of each moment. The fear and determination in Ethan's eyes as he faced the boardroom, the terror and love as they watched over Chloe in the hospital, and finally the sense of peace and belonging as they stood together overlooking the city. A note was attached to the back: "Dad and Mom. These 3 moments changed our lives forever. The janitor who refused to stay silent, the parents who watched over me through the night, the family we built from unlikely pieces. Thank you for showing me that life's most beautiful patterns are the ones we don't see coming. Love always, Chloe." Sloan traced her fingers over the painted figures. "She sees us, really sees us, not just as parents, but as people with our own story. That's because we never hid who we were from her. Our flaws, our struggles, our past mistakes, we let her see them all." Ethan put his arm around Sloan's shoulders. "Most kids have to grow up before they understand their parents are human. Chloe's always known." That night, they hung the triptych in the living room where they would see it every day, a reminder of where they'd been, what they'd overcome, and the daughter who now carried their story forward in her own way. Life settled into a new routine. Chloe called or texted daily at first, then gradually less frequently as she found her footing at Yale. Sloan and Ethan poured their extra energy into the foundation, expanding its research grants and advocacy work. Merit Capital continued to thrive under their leadership, with Ethan eventually becoming Chief Risk Officer, specializing in fraud detection systems that became industry standard. Grant Westfield remained in federal prison, his appeals repeatedly denied. Occasionally, financial publications would run retrospectives on the Merit Capital fraud case, citing it as a watershed moment for corporate accountability. Grant gave an interview to the Wall Street Journal on the 5th anniversary of his conviction, attempting to reframe his story as one of overzealous prosecution and misunderstood financial practices. No one was convinced. 3 years into Chloe's college experience during her junior year, she called with unexpected news. "Dad, Mom, I've been offered an incredible opportunity." The Yale program coordinator's voice was excited. "The Hirshhorn Museum in D.C. wants me for their summer internship program. Only 5 students were selected nationwide." "That's amazing, sweetheart." Ethan felt a surge of pride. "When would it start?" "Right after finals. I'd be in Washington for 3 months." "What about your medical management?" Sloan immediately went to the practical concerns. "You'll need to transfer all your prescriptions. Find a new endocrinologist for emergencies." "Already researched it." Chloe's voice was confident. "The Hirshhorn offers health insurance for interns, and Georgetown University Hospital has an excellent diabetes clinic. I've already contacted them." Ethan exchanged a glance with Sloan. Their little girl really didn't need them to manage the details of her life anymore. It was both heartbreaking and exactly what they had worked for. The Hirshhorn internship was just the beginning. After graduation, Chloe was accepted into a prestigious MFA program, then landed a fellowship at the Whitney Museum. Her own artistic career began to flourish with her work exploring themes of medical vulnerability, family bonds, and unexpected second chances. Critics noted her unique ability to transform personal narrative into universal human experience. At 26, Chloe opened her own gallery in Brooklyn, showcasing work by artists from disadvantaged backgrounds. The mission statement, printed in simple text on the entrance wall, read, "Every person has a pattern waiting to be recognized. Every story contains beauty hidden in plain sight." On opening night, Ethan and Sloan stood back watching their daughter work the room with easy confidence. Her insulin pump was visible beneath her elegant dress. She had long ago stopped trying to hide it, instead incorporating it into her personal aesthetic with custom-designed holders and decorative overlays. The centerpiece of the gallery was Chloe's latest work, a large-scale installation titled Patterns. It featured thousands of data points representing blood glucose readings, insulin doses, and life events transformed into a sweeping visual tapestry that, from a distance, formed 3 intertwined human figures. "Remember when we worried her diabetes would limit her life?" Sloan whispered. "That she'd be defined by her condition. Instead, she transformed it into art, into meaning." Ethan squeezed her hand. "Just like we transformed our worst moments into something beautiful." A young reporter approached Chloe, notepad in hand. "Ms. Graves Merritt, can you tell me about your inspiration for Patterns?" Chloe glanced at her parents before answering. "I grew up watching Patterns. My father taught me that patterns reveal truths others miss. My mother showed me how to transform those truths into action. And my own body taught me that what seems like chaos, like blood sugar readings that spike and fall, contains its own hidden order. This piece maps the data of my life: 18 years of glucose readings, insulin doses, major life events. From a distance, it forms my family, because that's what patterns ultimately reveal, the connections we might otherwise miss." The reporter scribbled furiously. "And the gallery's mission, showcasing artists from unconventional backgrounds. Life's most interesting stories rarely follow traditional paths. My father was once a janitor who saved a multi-billion-dollar firm by recognizing a fraud pattern everyone else missed. My mother was a CEO who discovered her greatest accomplishment wasn't the company she built, but the family she never planned to have." Chloe smiled. "The artists in this gallery all have stories that don't fit neat categories. Their work is powerful because of that, not despite it." After the interview, Chloe rejoined her parents, linking arms with both of them. "Well, what do you think?" "I think you've created something remarkable." Sloan's eyes shone with unshed tears. "Not just the art, but this space. This mission, it matters. You know what the best part is? Chloe looked around at the crowded gallery at the diverse artists whose work now had a platform. If Dad hadn't been mopping that floor outside the boardroom, if Mom hadn't called him in as a joke, if he hadn't had the courage to speak up, none of this exists. One moment of truth created all of this generations later. The gallery thrived, establishing Chloe as not just an artist, but a cultural curator and advocate. She expanded to a second location in Chicago, then a third in Los Angeles. Each space maintained the core mission, recognizing brilliance in unexpected places, giving platform to voices that might otherwise go unheard. At Merit Capital, Ethan and Sloan began the delicate process of succession planning. They were in their early 60s now, still sharp and energetic, but increasingly drawn to the foundation's work rather than day-to-day financial operations. Together, they had transformed Merit from a traditional investment firm into a leader in ethical finance with groundbreaking fraud detection systems and transparency protocols that set new industry standards. On the 20th anniversary of the day, Ethan walked into the boardroom with his mop. Merit Capital held a gala celebration. The event honored their journey and officially announced their transition to advisory roles, with carefully selected successors taking over operational leadership. Dorothy Hughes, now in her 80s but still sharp as ever, gave the opening remarks. 20 years ago, I witnessed something remarkable in our boardroom. A man with a mop spoke truth to power and saved this company from disaster. In the years since, Ethan and Sloan Graves Merritt have transformed Merit Capital into something none of us could have imagined, not just a financial powerhouse, but a beacon of ethical leadership. They proved that doing the right thing isn't just morally correct, it's good business. The crowd applauded as Ethan and Sloan took the stage together. They had aged well, their faces lined with experience, rather than hardship, their posture still commanding. 2 decades of shared purpose had molded them into a seamless unit, each completing the other's thoughts, each supporting the other's vision. Thank you, Dorothy, for that generous introduction. Sloan surveyed the room filled with colleagues, clients, and friends. 20 years ago, I made the worst joke of my professional career. I called a janitor into my boardroom to humiliate him, expecting him to embarrass himself. Instead, he saved our clients billions and set us on a path that redefined this company. Ethan stepped forward. I walked into that boardroom terrified, certain I was about to lose my job. I had no idea I was walking into my future, into a second chance I never thought I'd get. What happened that night proves something I've believed ever since: the truth has a pattern. And if you're brave enough to speak it, even when every instinct tells you to stay silent, it can change everything. The celebration continued late into the night. Industry leaders, politicians, and celebrities mingled with Merit employees, past and present. Chloe arrived late, coming straight from installing a new exhibition at her Los Angeles gallery. At 35, she had become a formidable presence in the art world, her galleries now prestigious launch platforms for emerging artists. The three of them slipped away from the main event for a quiet moment in Sloan's old office, now occupied by her successor, but still maintaining the same spectacular view of Manhattan. So what's next for you two? Chloe perched on the edge of the desk. Actually retiring or just changing business cards? We'll stay on the foundation board. Sloan stood at the window looking out at the city she had conquered and then transformed. And we'll keep our seats on Merit's ethics committee. But the day-to-day operations, we're ready to let that go. We want to travel more. Ethan joined Sloan at the window. See the world beyond boardrooms and balance sheets. Maybe spend more time at that house in Vermont we barely use. Chloe studied her parents, noting the easy way they stood together, still in sync after all these years. Are you worried about leaving Merit behind? It's been your life's work. It was never the buildings or the assets that mattered. Sloan turned from the window. It was creating something meaningful, something that outlasts us. The foundation will continue funding diabetes research long after we're gone. Merit will continue operating by the ethical standards we established. Your galleries will continue discovering new voices. The patterns we recognize, the structures we built, they'll outlive us. That's enough. The transition wasn't without challenges. Ethan and Sloan had been so integral to Merit Capital's identity that their departure, even when carefully orchestrated, created ripples throughout the organization. Some clients loyal to them personally threatened to take their business elsewhere. Competitors spread rumors about internal instability, hoping to poach key accounts during the leadership change. 6 months into the transition, a crisis erupted. A major client was implicated in a money laundering scheme. The new leadership team was divided. Some wanted to immediately cut ties to protect Merritt's reputation. Others argued for waiting until investigations were complete. The dispute went public when a board member leaked details to the financial press. Sloan and Ethan were in Vermont when the story broke. Their peaceful morning was interrupted by a flurry of calls and texts culminating in a video conference with the new CEO Jessica Chen, who had been Jennifer Park's protege. "We need you to weigh in." Jessica looked exhausted on the screen. "The board is split, the executive team is divided, and the press is having a field day speculating about Merritt's post-Graves Merritt era. What's your assessment?" Ethan kept his voice neutral, careful not to undermine Jessica's authority. "The evidence against Axiom Partners is concerning but not conclusive. Severing ties now protects our reputation, but potentially harms an innocent client. Waiting for more information is ethically sound, but risks association with a guilty party. Either way, we look indecisive because of the leak." Sloan and Ethan exchanged glances, having one of their silent conversations honed by decades together. Sloan finally spoke. "You don't need our opinion on Axiom, Jessica. You need to address the leak. Someone violated client confidentiality and board governance protocols. That's the immediate issue. Find that person, remove them, and make it public. Show that Merritt standards remain non-negotiable regardless of who's at the helm." Jessica looked surprised. "So you're saying focus on our house, not on Axiom precisely?" Ethan nodded. "Merritt's reputation was built on ethical clarity. Demonstrate that by addressing the breach of trust within your ranks first. Then make your Axiom decision from a position of organizational integrity. The specific choice matters less than showing you'll uphold the principles this company stands for." After the call ended, Sloan closed the laptop with a sigh. That felt strange, advising rather than deciding. "They're going to be fine." Ethan wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Jessica is smart. She just needed permission to trust her instincts." "I know. It's just hard to watch from the sidelines when we spent so many years in the game." Sloan leaned into him. "Do you ever regret stepping back?" "Not for a second. We built something that can run without us. That's success. Besides," Ethan gestured to the Vermont woods visible through their cabin window, ablaze with autumn colors. "We've earned this view." Jessica followed their advice. The board member who leaked the information was publicly removed for violating confidentiality protocols. Merritt then announced it was suspending its relationship with Axiom Partners, pending the outcome of investigations, while establishing an independent review of all related transactions. The decisive action quieted critics and reinforced the firm's ethical reputation even without Ethan and Sloan at the helm. Life settled into a new rhythm. They divided their time between Manhattan, Vermont, and visiting Chloe's expanding gallery empire. The foundation continued its work funding, promising research into artificial pancreas technology and cellular therapies for diabetes. They joined the boards of several nonprofits, offering their expertise in ethical governance and organizational development. On Ethan's 65th birthday, Chloe organized a surprise celebration at her original Brooklyn gallery. She gathered family, friends, former colleagues, and artists whose careers she had launched. The gallery walls showcased a special exhibition, Patterns of a Life, a retrospective of Chloe's work tracing her family's journey. The centerpiece was a newly completed portrait of Ethan composed entirely of tiny symbols representing key moments in his life. From a distance, it showed him as he was now distinguished, confident, at peace. Up close, viewers could see the countless small images that formed the whole: a mop, a spreadsheet, an insulin vial, a wedding ring, a baby's hand, a foundation logo, a Vermont landscape. Ethan stood before it, momentarily speechless. "When did you have time to create this?" "I've been working on it for 2 years." Chloe stood beside him. "A little at a time whenever you and Mom visited one of the galleries. It's called The Sum of Small Moments. It's extraordinary. The technique, the detail. It's you, Dad. All the small decisions, the quiet acts of courage, the daily choices that seemed insignificant at the time but ultimately defined your life and mine." Chloe took his hand. "You taught me that greatness isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just showing up day after day, seeing patterns others miss, speaking truth when it would be easier to stay silent." Later that evening, after the guests had departed, Ethan, Sloan, and Chloe sat together in the empty gallery surrounded by the visual history of their family. "Do you ever think about Grant?" Chloe asked suddenly. About where he is now occasionally? Sloane's voice was measured. He was released from prison last year. Supervised release, I believe. The financial press did a few "where are they now" pieces. I saw one. Ethan nodded. He's living with his sister in Arizona, working at her accounting firm. Do you feel vindicated that he served his full sentence while you two built all this? Chloe gestured to the gallery, to the life depicted in her artwork. I don't think about it in those terms. Ethan shook his head. What happened with Grant wasn't personal, not really. It was about patterns, again. Patterns of deception, of shortcuts, of valuing money above integrity. He followed that pattern to its natural conclusion. In a strange way, we owe him something. Sloane looked at her daughter, at her husband. If Grant hadn't tried to humiliate you that night, if he hadn't stolen from the company, if he hadn't tried to frame you, our lives would be completely different. We might never have become a family. The butterfly effect. Chloe nodded. One small change alters everything that follows. As they prepared to leave, Sloane paused before Chloe's portrait of Ethan. You know what strikes me about this piece? It captures something I've always known but could never quite articulate. Your father's greatness wasn't in any single heroic moment. It was in the accumulation of thousands of right choices, often made at personal cost. The day he walked into that boardroom wasn't an aberration. It was just the first time the rest of us recognized what was always there. The years continued their relentless march. Chloe married a fellow artist she met through her Chicago gallery. They had twin daughters, both tested immediately for genetic markers of diabetes. One showed the predisposition, the other didn't. Ethan and Sloane entered their 70s with the quiet dignity of people who had nothing left to prove and no regrets to reconcile. The foundation's work began to bear significant fruit. A therapy they had funded in its early uncertain stages showed remarkable promise in clinical trials. For the first time, patients with type 1 diabetes experienced regeneration of insulin-producing cells. It wasn't a cure yet, but it was the closest science had come, a treatment that could potentially transform diabetes from a lifelong condition to a manageable, perhaps even reversible one. The lead researcher, Dr. Amelia Rodriguez, insisted that Ethan, Sloane, and Chloe attend the press conference, announcing the breakthrough results. They sat in the front row as she explained the therapy's mechanism and potential impact. This advance didn't happen in isolation. Dr. Rodriguez gestured to them. 25 years ago, the Graves Merit Foundation began funding this research when most major institutions considered it too speculative, too risky. They recognized a pattern in the preliminary data that others missed, a possibility that has now become reality. Thousands of patients may soon benefit because one family refused to accept that some conditions are simply permanent. That evening, back in their Manhattan apartment, Ethan found Chloe and Sloane on the balcony looking out at the city lights. His girls, though one was now a grandmother herself and the other had silver threading through her dark hair. What are you two plotting out here? He joined them at the railing. Just thinking about circles, Sloane's voice was contemplative. How life brings you back to where you started, but transformed. 25 years ago, we were desperate for better treatments for Chloe. Now those treatments might actually exist partly because of our foundation. And because you recognize the pattern in Dr. Rodriguez's early research when other funders couldn't see it. Chloe leaned against her father's shoulder. Always the pattern recognition. The foundation had been my attempt to control something that felt uncontrollable, Sloane admitted. When Chloe was diagnosed, I couldn't fix it with money or influence or business strategy. It was terrifying. The foundation was my way of fighting back. And now look what that fight has accomplished. Ethan wrapped an arm around each of them. Dr. Rodriguez thinks the therapy could be widely available within 5 years. The twins might grow up in a world where diabetes isn't a lifelong sentence. They might grow up in a world where all kinds of things we thought were permanent turn out to be changeable. Chloe smiled. Where janitors become executives, where CEOs learn to see beyond balance sheets, where families form from the most unexpected beginnings. 2 years later, Ethan suffered a minor stroke. The doctors caught it quickly and the prognosis for recovery was excellent. But the incident shook the family. Mortality, previously an abstract concept, suddenly had a tangible presence in their lives. During his hospital stay, Ethan had an unexpected visitor. A man in his late 70s, thin and stooped with hands that trembled slightly as he clutched a small gift bag. Grant Westfield looked nothing like the confident executive Ethan remembered. Prison and age had hollowed him out, leaving behind a shell of the man who once commanded billions in assets. They told me you were here. Grant's voice was hesitant. I hope it's okay that I came. Ethan gestured to the visitor's chair. How did you know I still follow financial news? There was a small item about you being hospitalized. Grant sat carefully. I live in New York again. My sister died last year, so I moved back. I work part-time at a community college, teaching basic accounting. The awkward silence stretched between them, 30 years of history compressed into a hospital room. I brought you something, Grant finally said, offering the bag. It's not much. Inside was a book, Pattern Recognition in Financial Systems. Grant's name was listed as the author. You wrote a textbook. Ethan turned it over to reading the back cover. It's used in some ethics courses now. Grant's voice strengthened slightly, about how fraud happens, how to spot it, how to prevent it. I used our case study anonymized, of course. I thought maybe some good could come from my mistakes if others learned from them. Ethan studied the man before him. Not the enemy he had once feared, just an old man trying to find meaning in the wreckage of his choices. Thank you for the book and for coming. I owe you an apology. Grant's hands wouldn't stop trembling, for everything. The humiliation, the theft trying to destroy your reputation. Again, I've had a lot of years to think about patterns too, patterns of my own making. Pride entitlement shortcuts. I followed them straight to a cell. We all follow patterns. Some lead to prison cells, others to hospital rooms. Ethan gestured to the machines monitoring his vital signs. None of us escapes consequences. But you built something. A company, a foundation, a family. I destroyed everything I touched. Grant looked down at his hands, including my own life. It's never too late to recognize a destructive pattern and change course, Ethan said quietly. Even now. After Grant left, Sloan arrived with coffee and a change of clothes. She noticed the book on Ethan's bedside table and picked it up, her expression darkening when she saw the author's name. Grant Westfield was here, in your hospital room. He wanted to apologize. Ethan explained the unexpected visit. He's teaching ethics now, using our story to warn others. Sloan set the book down carefully as if it might bite. Are you okay? Surprisingly, yes. Seeing him now, diminished and remorseful. I realized something I've been carrying for 30 years. Fear that somehow, someday, he would take everything from me again. But looking at him today, I saw the truth. He never had that power. Only I did. Ethan's recovery was swift and complete. The stroke left no lasting physical impairments, though it did leave the family with a heightened awareness of time's passage. Chloe began spending more weekends in Manhattan. Sloan reduced their travel schedule. They all became more intentional about creating memories together, about documenting their continuing story. On their 35th wedding anniversary, Ethan and Sloan held a small celebration at their Vermont home. Only family and their closest friends attended, a stark contrast to the society galas and corporate events that had once filled their calendar. Chloe and her husband brought the twins, now 7 years old and bubbling with energy. The one with diabetes wore an advanced monitoring system that automatically adjusted insulin delivery technology that hadn't existed when Chloe was a child. After dinner, as twilight settled over the mountains, Chloe presented them with a gift, a custom-bound book titled Recognize Patterns. On the inside were photographs spanning their 35 years together, interspersed with essays from people whose lives they had touched, colleagues from Merit Capital, researchers funded by their foundation, artists launched through Chloe's galleries, and most movingly, families affected by the new diabetes therapies. The final pages contained handwritten letters from the twins to their grandparents. The one with the diabetes had written, "Grandma and Grandpa, thank you for making my medicine possible. Mommy says you saw a pattern that helped doctors make better treatments. I think you're like superheroes, but with brains instead of capes." Ethan and Sloan sat together on the porch swing, passing the book back and forth long after everyone else had gone to bed. The mountain air was cool, the stars brilliant overhead. 35 years. Sloan shook her head in wonder. When I called you into that boardroom, I thought I was about to witness 30 seconds of embarrassment. Instead, I got 35 years of partnership. Would you do it all again? Knowing everything, the challenges with Chloe's health, the fight with Grant, the public scrutiny of our relationship, in a heartbeat. Sloan rested her head against his shoulder. But I'd be kinder that first night, less arrogant. I don't know. Ethan smiled. That arrogance was part of your charm. The brilliant, untouchable CEO who needed no one until suddenly she did. It made watching you fall in love with me all the more satisfying. And when did you know that I was falling for you that night in the Thai restaurant when you asked about Chloe? Not about my career or my skills or what I could do for Merit Capital. About my daughter. That's when I saw beneath the CEO armor to the woman who would become my wife, my partner, my best friend. Sloane's fingers intertwined with his, the gesture automatic after so many years. For me, it was when you refused to let me cover up Grant's fraud. When you said I was better than that, no one had ever expected better of me before, only more. More profit, more growth, more success. You were the first person who believed I could be more human, not just more successful. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead, feeling the weight and wonder of a life built from the most unlikely beginning. A life neither of them could have imagined that night in the Merit Capital boardroom, when a janitor with a mop dared to speak truth to power and a CEO with everything made the fateful decision to listen. Life continued its inevitable march. Ethan and Sloane celebrated their 40th anniversary with a small family gathering, both now in their late 70s, but still sharp, still engaged with the foundation's work, still deeply connected to each other. Chloe's art career reached new heights with a retrospective at the Museum of Modern Art, featuring works spanning her 30-year career, including the original triptych she had painted for her parents when leaving for Yale. The diabetes therapy funded by their foundation received final FDA approval, transforming treatment protocols worldwide. It wasn't a complete cure, but it allowed many patients to reduce or sometimes eliminate insulin dependence, significantly reducing complications and improving quality of life. The twin with diabetes was among the first pediatric patients to receive the treatment with promising initial results. One crisp autumn morning, Ethan woke before sunrise in their Vermont home. Sloane was still asleep beside him, her silver hair spread across the pillow, her face peaceful in repose. He watched her for a moment, marveling at how love had only deepened with time, how the ambitious CEO who once terrified an entire boardroom had become his most steadfast companion, his partner in all things. He slipped quietly from bed and made coffee, then took his mug to the porch to watch the sunrise over the mountains. The world was changing around them. Merit Capital now operated in a financial landscape vastly different from the one they had known, with artificial intelligence and algorithmic trading transforming the industry. The foundation had expanded its mission beyond diabetes research to include other autoimmune conditions. Chloe's galleries had evolved into a major cultural institution with locations in 6 cities. Yet the core patterns remained: truth still mattered, integrity still prevailed in the long run, and love still transformed lives in the most unexpected ways. As the first rays of sunlight crested the mountains, painting the valley in gold, Ethan felt a profound sense of contentment. Not because life had been perfect, it hadn't, but because it had been authentic. Every challenge faced honestly, every victory earned through principle rather than expedience. Every relationship built on truth rather than convenience. Sloane joined him on the porch, wrapping a blanket around both their shoulders. "Morning," her voice was soft, still raspy with sleep. "Morning." Ethan handed her his coffee mug, which she accepted without comment, another small ritual honed over decades together. Sloane took a sip, then returned the mug to his hands. "You know what I was thinking about last night?" Sloane watched the sunrise colors intensify. "That moment when you first walked into my boardroom with your mop and your terrified expression. How close we came to missing all of this. If you'd been assigned to a different floor that night, if I hadn't called you in as a cruel joke, if you'd lacked the courage to speak up, then we wouldn't be sitting here now." Ethan nodded. "But that's true of every life-changing moment. The paths not taken always outnumber the one we choose. But most people don't recognize their life-changing moments until they've passed. You saw it happening in real time. You recognized the pattern as it was forming." "Not really," Ethan smiled. "I just knew I couldn't stay silent when I saw that fraud pattern. Everything else, you, Chloe, Merit, the foundation, that was all unintended consequence. Beautiful, miraculous consequence that I could never have predicted." Sloane leaned against him, her head finding its familiar place on his shoulder. "That's the final pattern, isn't it? How our greatest moments often come disguised as our worst. Your humiliation in that boardroom. My mistake calling you in. Grant's theft. Chloe's diagnosis. Each one a disaster that somehow led to something wonderful." As the sun climbed higher, bathing the valley in golden light, They sat together in the comfortable silence of people who no longer needed words to communicate their deepest truths. Two unlikely souls who had found each other through circumstance, but stayed together through choice. A janitor and a CEO who had recognized in each other something worth believing in, worth fighting for, worth building a life around. The pattern of their lives, unexpected, challenging, beautiful in its complexity, stretched out behind them like a tapestry finally visible in its entirety. And ahead lay whatever time remained to them each day, a new thread in the continuing design. Not perfect, but purposeful. Not without struggle, but rich with meaning. A pattern recognized, appreciated, and lived with full awareness of its fleeting, precious nature. In Manhattan, Merit Capital's headquarters still stood transformed, but carrying forward the ethical standards they had established. In Brooklyn, Chicago, Los Angeles, and beyond, Chloe's galleries continued discovering new artistic voices. In hospitals across the country, children with diabetes received treatments that might have seemed miraculous 40 years earlier. And in countless ways, they would never know the ripples of that single moment of courage. A janitor speaking truth in a boardroom continued to spread outward, touching lives, changing patterns, creating possibilities. The truth had a pattern. Ethan had always believed that. And if you were brave enough to speak it, even when every instinct told you to stay silent, it could indeed change everything, not just for yourself, but for generations to come. That was the legacy they had built together, not of wealth or power or prestige, but of courage and integrity and love. A legacy that would outlive them both, continuing its pattern long after they were gone. And as the morning light filled the valley, that knowledge was enough. More than enough. It was everything.